Well, the easiest way to fight piracy is to not make it accessible digitally, but companies know they can't really do that.
Now that genie left the bottle a long time ago. The Pandora Con opened, the digital fairy was resurrected by it's Doctor Who references inserted here. It's
There's still companies that think that,
yeah.
They don't go digital because of that reason.
Microsoft's one of them. They're very, very, very slowly allowing you to download stuff online. The whole idea of digital scares them. We want you to buy the physical CD.
Microsoft's view on piracy is pretty interesting. Like them pirating Windows. Like in China, I think that most of the Windows versions there are pirated. Most of the
Well, no, China's actually the perfect example of that. It's one of the main reasons Windows is so pirated in China is because it's so goddamn expensive. And Microsoft's solution to that was almost laughable. They came out, these ultra-light versions of Windows, that led to the Choose a Vista wheel and other shit like that. The whole reason those came out was for countries like China, where piracy is so rampant. We're like, well, okay, we'll come up with this $50 version of Windows that will allow you to do 3 things at once. That's why it's $50. And this is because we want there to be an affordable version of Windows so you don't pirate it. And everybody in the tech industry looked at that and goes, they can go down the street and get the full professional version for $10. Why are they going to buy this $30 to $50 version that is so restricting? How about you just adopt price points that make sense? or licensing that makes sense, or support and licensing that makes sense. Give them incentive to buy the legal copy. It's like...
Yeah. I was actually looking at that Microsoft has stated that they would rather people pirate Windows than switch to another operating system.
Yeah, that's actually true. I would rather they make it so you don't have to pirate Linux. It's pirate Windows, I mean.
Stated that they'd rather you use Windows legally than use Linux.
No, that's the thing. It's when I was a kid. One of the reasons I stole so much was because this was my way of sticking it to companies like Microsoft. I go, well, the licensing should be this way. As I grew up a little bit more, I realized, okay, that's never going to change. If I really want that to change, what I need to do is, instead of pirating, I need to circumvent that legally. It's like now, my philosophy now is if somebody asks me to make an illegal copy of something or pirate Microsoft or Adobe software stuff in the way you're talking about, is I go, have you heard about OpenOffice? I realize it doesn't quite do everything that Microsoft Office does, but I think for your needs it suits you, and it's legal. It's like that's my philosophy now. It's like, I forget if it was a Christmas or two ago. Everybody was going because somehow I've gotten that reputation with them. I was like, oh, do you have a copy of Word you can just give us? And I remind them, I'm like, no, but there's this thing called OpenOffice you can download. It's like people's first reaction is, like you say, to pirate the commercial stuff rather than remember, there is a legal free alternative.
Speaking of OpenOffice, I don't know if I talked about this with you or Jordan, but what do you think is going to happen to OpenOffice?
In what way?
Well, it's not Sun anymore. It's now Oracle, and Oracle hasn't really shown much interest in it. I don't know if you've heard about this.
I haven't. I've heard about it here or there. I haven't really looked into it. This is something we should probably cover in Linux show tomorrow in full.
Alright, we can do that.
Honestly, what will probably happen to it if Oracle completely abandons it is it's just got too much of a following in the open source community. There are a whole mess of projects in the open source community now that were alive, then died, then resurrected by the community as a whole because they were open source. They became something else,
right?
But because they were so integral to things in open source refused to let them die and picked the projects back up.
Yeah.
So it's the only way I would see that not happening would be if Oracle goes, no, we own this, you can't keep it alive.
But what I've been heard, people have been begging Oracle to give it to the community, because they're not doing anything. And Oracle hasn't made a comment on it. They're not giving it to the community. They're not doing anything with it. People have been, saying, if you're not going to do anything with OpenOffice, give it to the community. But they're not doing anything yet. So.
This has happened a couple of times before, and that situations like that, it's basically people with some business sense approach them and go, all right, assholes, what's your bounty price? Because sometimes when companies buy that, they just want a paycheck. And they're like, they don't want to give it, but they'll sell it. And they go raise the money. They're like, they'll like start a petition site somewhere. Make blah blah open and free or whatever. It's like, this is the price to set it free, help us raise it. Yada yada and so forth. I don't like that tactic. Like, I'll give you an example. I forget if it's linuxpc.com or there's some Linux site that is for sale, and it's been bought by these people who claim to have trademarked the term Linux and for marketing and yada yada and so forth. Like, we all know how laughable that is. Even if they've managed to do that with the U.S. Trademark and Copyright Office, anyone who tried to enforce that would get sued in 5 seconds by Linus and the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Open Foundation. It's like, this would not fly. People wouldn't have a problem with using that domain, but they have to fly. And basically these people want, I'm not going to say what their actual number is, let's just say they're convinced that domain's worth over $250,000. And their intent to sit on it from now until the time somebody gives them that money.
LinuxPC.com?
Yeah, I think that's which one it is. Let me see.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's bidding, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and they're like, well, we only want serious, and that's their number. Like, they want 6 figures, they want high 6 figures. It's one of those, because of these people, I almost recommend, even if they have the money, nobody buy that domain, because it's been poisoned forever by these people.
Right.
It will have this negative stigma as far as Linux goes, pretty much indefinitely. It's like, so this is the dark side of open source, and it's one of the things open source doesn't like at all. They don't like people coming here. Open source is not opposed to people selling a product. Open source is not opposed to people making money. Open source Linux and the community in general does not like people raping it. and things like this, and things like we've acquired this open source project. If the community would like it, they can acquire it for a profit for us.
Right.
It's one of those things. It's in bad taste. It's directly in contradiction of the whole spirit of open and everything else, and it's like Oracle might get bit in the ass if that's really what they're trying to do.
What's going to happen? The people get mad at him. Like, tell me what would happen if Oracle just, for some reason, just refused to do anything with OpenOffice and didn't give it back? What would happen with Office and Linux? Because
an overwhelming amount of development would take place in Abbey Word.
Because Abbey Word's really not comparable.
Yeah, like I said, but since it's open and free and still part of the community, an overwhelming amount of development would take place in Abbey Word rather quickly. That would be Plan B.